So today I wanted to create a few voice horror sound effects, and I just made a few recordings and wanted to share the process of creating one of these with you. We are not going to do any crazy processing because the recordings are supposed to do most of the work. So this is going to be, I would say, very basic processing of a few recordings and then layering them a bit to create a sound effect with them. That's kind of in the horror, tension, suspense style. So let's just listen to the recordings that I made. And I'm not sure if we're going to use all, but I've just prepared these for now. So they sound kind of funny. So let's see if we can create something a bit more scary with them. First, I'm going to EQ them a bit, and I might have to put them on different tracks because they might not all need the same type of processing. But I know that I want to get rid of some low end. They sound a bit muddy. And for these first three, the first part, which is the breathing out part, is way louder than the breathing in part, as we can see here. So I want to compress these quite a bit in order to make it a bit more even. So I'm just going to use a compressor here, and I think I'm going to have to set the threshold really low to catch this here. And I'm also going to use an EQ afterwards because compression can bring up some unwanted noise and frequencies. I'm just going to make sure to even it out a bit again. I probably have to do a low cut again. And I think with the other three, I don't really want them to go through the same type of compression. So I'm just going to copy them down here, and we can mute these guys up here. And here I'm just going to mainly dial back the compression quite a bit. So any further processing I'm going to do when I'm layering them. I'm just going to record these three now, so I have the processing in the recording. Now the good thing about having three very similar recordings is that I can layer them just to create a fuller sound, similar to doubling guitar tracks, which is a very common technique as well. And in this case, we can also just choose one that's gonna be in the middle, and the other ones we can just pan left, right to get a wider stereo image. I think I'm gonna choose this one as the middle one, and the other two can be panned left, right. I'm not hard panning them, but this should be wide enough. So also make sure that they're in time. They don't have to be perfectly aligned, but this actually looks kind of okay. So let's group this. Let's just hear what we have. So this is quite nice. I think we can even pan them a bit further out. This is already a pretty nice sound effect, to be honest, that I would save. But I would probably create a dry version of this, like the one we have currently, and then I would also create a wet version of this. And I would probably just place a reverb on the two panned ones. So we have the middle one completely dry without any reverb. And then on the panned ones, essentially in the stereo image, we have the reverb. Let's just use the Ableton stock reverb. It is kind of nice. Again, this would be kind of the wet version of this sound effect, and then we have a dry version without any reverb on there. And now we could continue and layer the other sounds on there too and see if they can add something to this. I'm actually not completely sure with the other sounds, but with this we could just see if maybe we can use this to fade into this sound. So let's duplicate these here, and just so that we keep the processing on these tracks. And then I would at first try to work with these two here. I feel like I definitely want to pitch them around. Maybe have them both at a different pitch. Probably a bit shorter as well. This sounds a bit more eerie, I think, than before. We'll probably just group these again and then see maybe if even we can get away with some multiband compression. In this case, some really extreme multiband compression. Put the EQ afterwards. probably put some reverb on these as well. Just gonna copy the reverb of these group down here and just maybe dial it back a bit. This is also gonna help to put this a bit more in the background because again, this is the main part of this effect. Maybe it's better to pitch this one down more and this one up a bit instead. Yeah, I think so. Because this one had a really weird noise in there. It was kind of annoying. Now that's gone. Now let's see if maybe this one down here can help to sort of gel this a bit more with the rest. Let's pitch this one around as well a bit. I think this could work, but we are gonna need a bit of reverb on there. You know, and some of these sounds on their own could already be used as just as a horror sound effect. These sound effects don't have to be too complicated and too complex. Some really simple sounds can actually do the job a lot of the time, and you just want to avoid unnecessary complexity. Yeah, I just think that the timing is a bit off because now we have aligned it to the grid, but it's actually not on the grid. So I'm just gonna drag this a bit further. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna make these a bit quieter. So this one pops a bit more. I can also increase the volume of this one here a bit. I mean, you could do a version with a lot more reverb. We could also do some processing on the group. I think this one is gonna be the main part. So using compression now is kind of interesting because, of course, now we are compressing the reverb that's on the individual tracks. And this can be a really nice effect as well. You just bring the reverb out a bit more. We could also use some saturation. Let's actually print this version. Actually just mute these guys, and then we just have this effect here with the reverb on the two penned ones. And then we have our dry version where we deactivate the reverb. And I mean, you could just create a few more versions with different effects on there. You could see what happens if you pitch all of them down and try out maybe different warp modes. Let's see just what happens if we pitch them all around at the same time. So this is a bit different. You can also pitch it up and see what happens. So this actually sounds really cool as well. I'm just gonna record this. And so by doing this, you can get a lot of different effects very quickly with a few recordings. And as I said before, some of these individual ones can also be used on their own. Like these guys here, you could, create a few effects with them as well without layering them too much. And so there's also not a lot of processing involved for this kind of stuff. If you, just get decent recordings, and this is not only true for voice sound effects. If you have good recordings or recordings that are already, I would say 80% there, depending on what kind of effect you want to have. If you have a good recording that really fits, then you don't really have to do a lot of processing or a lot of, I would say, crazy layering. So if you want to create sound effects like this, I hope that this gives you some insight, and then you don't have to overthink it and don't make stuff unnecessarily complicated.